This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Bonjour, my name is Alice, welcome back to my channel. A few days ago I stumbled upon this video that I wanted to show you. Here it is.
The problem with investing in a business owned by a rich kid is usually raised money already rather easily. So I think it's so much harder for a rich kid to succeed as an entrepreneur. My poor people, those are my winners. Yeah, they're desperate to succeed.
This woman you just saw is called Barbara Corcoran. She's an entrepreneur who has made her fortune in real estate in New York. Maybe you know her because she was on Shark Tank, the popular American TV show, and she also took part in Dancing with the Stars. Before she became so famous and so rich with real estate investing, Barbara did a ton of low-paid jobs. In fact, Barbara grew up in a household with a ton of siblings, a loving mother, and a father who worked multiple jobs and would occasionally drink and disrespect his wife and children. I found all that information in an interview she did with Stephen Bartlett, and I was honestly amazed at how Barbara turned every single hardship into something that made her stronger. 10 siblings? Well, she learned how to share, cooperate, and understand how to build teams. Exhausting low-paid jobs with unpleasant bosses, while she discovered that she was good at building systems and that she wanted to lead. Misogyny in the real estate world? Well, she remained quiet and proved those rich boys that they were wrong about her. She explains that without those hardships, she probably wouldn't be as successful as she is. That the trauma and pain she experienced was a condition for success. Now, we're gonna pause with Barbara and we're gonna look at another video.
There's a certain amount of trauma that's the right amount of trauma that turns you into this high achiever. You always have to win something because you're trying to win favor, win attention, win rewards, win glory, win something. So you're always achieving, you're always driving yourself towards something, but it's not because you were born with drive. It's because some part of your childhood, those formative years, taught you that by achieving, you will be rewarded.
Okay, so this one is a bit messy. I don't think you need to experience childhood trauma to understand that when you achieve something, you get a reward for it. We've pretty much all experienced it in school, with our parents, in sports, at work. And also that phrase, the right amount of trauma, doesn't make any sense, really. Trauma isn't something you can measure, so I wonder how the scientific studies he talks about have been conducted. I did my little research and I found out about this psychological concept called Posttraumatic growth, PTG. It means that after a traumatic event, some people experience growth. In fact, Barbara Corcoran could be a great example for that video, what the guy is talking about. She experienced the right amount of trauma, learned the lessons that needed to be learned, and became super successful because of it. In fact, what the guy says sounds plausible. The belief that trauma brings success or growth is quite popular. The concept of post-traumatic growth, so the scientific explanation for the no pain, no gains, has gained legitimacy. It has been represented in TED Talks.
Imagine a brain tumor, the gift that keeps on giving. And while I'm okay now, I wouldn't wish this gift for you. I'm not sure you'd want it, but I wouldn't change my experience. I'm gonna stay.
It has also made it to big publications like the New York Times. It generates clicks and views and sales. I mean, we love those stories of trauma and success. Now, we don't want to hear about your rich parents investing into your business, or that big donation they had made to that elite college you ended up going to. We want the starting from the bottom now we're here type of stories. And someone like Barbara provides exactly that. So because of her life experience and her belief in a connection between trauma and success, she systematically refuses to invest in rich kids. Like she really does.
If I didn't make a deal within 2 weeks, I was dead. I needed to live somewhere and eat. What is in your way, I believe, is that your father is helping you. The people that really succeed have a real necessity. They have to do it or the sky's gonna fall in. I can't believe enough to put my money in, so for that reason, I'm out.
Barbara wants the people she invests in to be driven not by motivation or passion, but by survival. What makes a poor kid valuable is that they aspire to pay for the vacation they never had, that they have been taught to wait tables and scrap, that they are used to be shouted at, that they know what it feels like to be treated like a replaceable piece of shit. On top of that, poor kids are more likely to have lived in unstable households, To have experienced financial insecurity, abuse, a lack of personal space, unhealthy diets, Barbara is very much conscious of the class divide and the lack of opportunity for poor kids. And I think that she, as a former poor kid herself, wanted to show that they deserve a chance. As you saw on that Shark Tank clip I showed a minute ago, she struggles to have empathy for those who don't know what she had to go through to get where she is. Barbara's attitude reminds me of that quote from French novelist Annie Ernaux, a poor kid turned Nobel Prize of Literature, who wrote, quote, "I will write to avenge my race," meaning her social class. The only problem is that her experience, I'm talking about Barbara, her experience as a poor kid turned rich mom is extremely uncommon. First, investment firms, venture capitalists, bankers don't invest in poor kids. It's too risky, they don't have any financial support. Second, growing up poor and having gone through traumatic experiences doesn't necessarily make you stronger. Quite the contrary. Some scientists have warned the public that the concept of post-traumatic growth isn't really a thing. Ph.D. Anthony Macini showed that almost all of the studies on post-traumatic growth tend to do the same thing. They ask people who have potentially experienced a traumatic event if they are better off because of it. And in fact, many people report that they are indeed a better person. They have grown. They see new possibilities in life. But does this mean they actually are better? In other words, are they actually wiser, more compassionate and closer to others? Or do they just perceive that they are? Macini answers that it turns out that it is very difficult to separate these two things, the perception that we are better and the actuality that we are. Instead, many researchers believe that post-traumatic growth may only be a positive illusion, something you tell yourself to get better. That's exactly what I thought when I watched Barbara's interview with Stephen Bartlett. As I said, every hardship, every struggle she faced had to be turned into something positive. And I kind of related to Barbara's experience. I've always turned hardships, rejections, etc. into a positive. I always stand back up very quickly when something bad happens, and it's something I'm really, really proud of. But you can't prevent yourself from feeling what you are supposed to feel. It will come back and hit you at some point, and that is exactly what happens for the less fortunate of us. They can't escape reality. They live with the mental illness. They live with the financial insecurity. They carry all those hardships with them on a daily basis. And they are being told that this is the right moment, the right amount of trauma for them to build a successful business. You have no excuses. Now I want to shift the conversation towards something else, kind of turned everything upside down. So we talked about the CEOs wanting to work with poor kids. But what about the poor kids who get to work with the rich?
When you get paid by the hour to clean rich people's houses.
Hi, I'm Madison. I'm a private tennis coach in the Hamptons.
I started working for Millionaire at 16 years old. This goes to show that you are one person, one conversation away.
So many things, myth, common sense, nonsense to unpack in this video, right? Working for rich people is always presented as something super cool online. Whether it's sugar babying, au pairing, working in VIP rooms, etc. It's easy money for little work. Now, in a study she conducted with domestic workers, French sociologist Alizée Delpierre showed that it is true that many of them get opportunities that regular domestic workers do not get. We're talking about free holidays, free clothes and products, a coverage of medical costs, or the education of the workers' children. On top of that, domestic workers also get to learn about rich people's culture, codes, manners, and that's something that can be beneficial for them. However, Delpierre showed that the gifts and extra off-contract money aren't given away for free. Rich employers expect that poor employees devote themselves to their job, so to their bosses. I remember watching a documentary recently from Vice, I believe, where they interviewed a guy who used to work for very, very rich people on their yacht, and he would explain all the abuse, all the violence. A lot of illegal things happen on those boats, but He had to stay silent. He was not just paid to do his job, he was also paid to just shut up, basically. In the book, Delpierre talks about employers who buy their employees' silence regarding adultery, domestic violence, etc. Other employers believe that they can abuse them, that they can be physically violent, that they can touch them without their consent. Poor workers have to shut up, they have to remain grateful because they are always on the verge of being replaced. Another thing the author highlighted in the book is that domestic workers can't complain about work because they are part of the family, which means that finances, for example, are taboo. For all money people, having domestic workers willing to sacrifice their family, sacrifice their personal life, is a long-term tradition. For new money people, on the other hand, having a lot of domestic workers is about social status. As the author tells in the book, a woman and a man felt they had to hire domestic workers even if they didn't need them or even want them, because like their neighbors and friends, they had to have the big house, the big car, the big swimming pool, and the domestic workers. Whether they are old or new money, employers envision having domestic workers as an act of charity. They love to dramatize the life of their workers to friends and family, to portray themselves as extra charitable. Having domestic workers make them feel good about themselves. Barbara, yes, let's go back to Barbara now. Well, Barbara feels good about herself when she says she only invests in poor kids and that others should do too. She knows that what she preaches is very unlikely to happen since investors only care about profit, let's be honest. Her message rather serves her. It makes her look like a good CEO, a good boss, and I'm sure she is.
I love firing people on Friday.
Well, at least she tries, okay? Later in the interview, Barbara was asked if she would invest in her own rich kids. And she said yes, of course she will. Most rich parents do, and that's why her message sounds tone deaf. But she defended herself. She said that her kids were rich, that's for sure, but they were dyslexic, very dyslexic. They suffered from it and fought to overcome it. They deserve to be successful because they suffered too. They experienced the right amount of trauma. To conclude, the relationship between poor kids and rich bosses is based on the belief that trauma is a social currency. The poor worker can use it to get the attention of the rich boss, and the rich boss uses it in return to appear more charitable. But it's the poor kid's job to maintain the positive illusion. It's their job to turn every hardship into growth, even if the reality is way more nuanced than that. It's their job to feed the trauma success myth that hurts them so much. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, the conversation continues in the comment section. Don't forget to like, to subscribe if it's not already done. I'm so sweaty, my hair is sticking on my neck. But yeah, big thank you to my patrons for their support, and a special thank to top tier patrons. Don't mind my computer overheating over there. But a big thank you to Ria, Joey Esguerra, Ivan, Jason, Rémi, Trébizon, Toki, Koriji, Donage, Alex, Ren, Tristan, Patricia, Ian, Sam, Manuel, Alexis, and Perry. And a big thank you to those who preferred to remain anonymous. Before I leave, I need to talk to you about today's sponsor, Squarespace. Squarespace is an all-in-one platform for building your brand and growing your business online. You can create your own website around your preferred aesthetic from a catalog of templates and use it as a landing platform for all the activity you do. YouTube, online shop, blog, podcast, photography, etc. Once that is set up, you can connect all your social media accounts and share content between different platforms. Squarespace can also help you create effective email campaigns to really connect with your community. Finally, they have this very cool feature where you can connect and learn from other creators like Adrien Raquel, who will show you how you can best use the platform. If you feel like Squarespace is made for you and you want to check it out, go to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you've experimented and you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/alice.cappelleyt to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Thank you Squarespace for sponsoring the video, and yeah, I'll see you very soon. Salut! Whether they are new or old money, employers envision having domestic workers as an act of chastity, as an act of charity.